And we are live. Good evening. My name is Sarah Rahaman Shaikh, and I am an English honours student of Rani Billa Girls College under Calcutta University. I welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of tribal art and tribal representation in art in shaping cultural identity and ideology, curated under TMYS Review June 2024 in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are also calling for the submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Paul Abraham, Haimanti Bagchi, Dr. Jaseera CM, and Dr. Manjiri Thakoor, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is representation of tribal women in historic paintings and sculpture under the sub-theme Tribal Representation in Art. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Paul Abraham. Paul Abraham is an art patron and collector of historical artifacts, modern and contemporary art, and living traditions from the Indian subcontinent. He founded Sarmaya in 2015 to serve as a repository for his private collection, but more critically, to foster a love for art and history among the young and the curious. A banker with over 35 years of experience, he is currently the president of the Hinduja Foundation. We are delighted to have you on the panel, sir. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Likewise, thank you.
Our second speaker for the session is Haimanti Bagchi. Haimanti Bagchi is a poet, artist, communication trainer, business storyteller, and independent researcher focused on creating awareness of indigenous culture, art, and literature. Her poems and short stories have been part of various anthologies and digital platforms like TMYS Reviews, Readomania, Scarlet Dragonfly, Yukioto Publishing House, Shades Publishing, and The Quill House. Her latest poetry collection is Autumn of Life, published by Author Press. She is the co-owner of the creative firm based in China, Artlit, an art and literary community. We are delighted to have you on the panel, ma'am. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's in Chennai, based in Chennai.
Okay. Our third speaker for the session is Dr. Jaseera CM, a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of History, University of Calicut, on use alteration traces on the megalithic burial pottery of Kerala. She has worked for British Museum, French Institute in Pondicherry, Indian Institute of Technology in Gandhinagar, Gujarat, Archaeological Survey of India in Excavation Branch in Delhi, Kerala State Archaeology Department, and Kerala Council for Historic Research. Her research papers have been published in international and national journals. She has trained in lithic mapping and geographic information system. Her research interest includes ceramic studies, Kerala archaeology, Indian Ocean, cultural interactions, and maritime history. We are delighted to have you on the panel, ma'am. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay, there might be some sound issue. Moving
Jaseera,
forward,
you actually it is showing muted. Yeah. No.
Okay, there is some sound issue that we are facing with Jaseera, ma'am. Okay, moving forward, I would like to introduce also our fourth speaker for the session, Dr. Manjiri Thakoor. Dr. Manjiri Thakoor is an independent art curator and adjunct lecturer at Sir J.J. School of Art. She was a deputy curator at the National Gallery of Modern Art, Mumbai, Ministry of Culture under Government of India, and is the honorable subcommittee member, the Asiatic Society of Mumbai. She has also been a part of various national and international conferences. She is the founder of VARSA, that aims to practice and celebrate traditional Indian craft. She published illustrated manuscript, Madhumalati Katha, and oral traditions and narrative art. Her book reviews are South India under Vijayanagar Art and Architecture and Turks in the Indian subcontinent, Central and West Asia. We are delighted to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us this
Likewise.
evening.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you.
We will now open the forum for discussion. I would request Paul Abraham to share his insights. So, over to you now.
Well, I think I'm going to kind of, put a little context to Sarmaya and then take it from there into the broader theme that we are discussing today. Sarmaya is, of course, a multi genre collection set up by me in 2015. Um, it you know it was a repository of art which I collected over the last 30-40 years. Started with my father giving me a small Vaseline bottle of coins from Travancore. So I'm originally from Kerala, but I grew up in Delhi. So he told me that, just take this as a reminder of your legacy. And then this journey of collecting started. So I started with coins, went into maps, all of that. Uh, and Somewhere along the journey, one got interested in, community art forms. And that's a slightly broader theme than just pure tribal, as one would imagine. But I would say that there are, parallels even there because most of that is very rural in its makeup, and in therefore, from a perspective of how some of these art forms, which for the lack of another word, one could say indigenous art, you could say tribal art, you could say community art. In the Indian context, it is essentially where they draw upon stories that have existed for generations, and then they put all of that on paper now, on their walls before. So how has that journey happened and how is it evolving? When we talk about indigenous and community art forms, and in the context of the gender issue, I must say that for most parts, and I'm talking now about multiple parts of the country, whether it is in central India and Madhya Pradesh, or whether it is, the Gond and Bhil art forms, or if it is in Madhubani or, Saura or Matani Pachedi, or even some of the community art forms like Tolu Bomalata, which is leather puppets, etc. The role of the woman and the context of the female is quite intrinsic. And that goes from some of the characters that are central to the art form, to some of the players and some of the creators, to some of the inspirational forces that constitute the art form. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So, in the tradition of Matani Pachedi, which was essentially an art form that was propagated by a group called the Wagris, and they are like nomads. The entire art form is predicated on the female form of Shakti. Okay, so they say that technically they have 999 female forms, and each of them is represented through a certain imagery and through a certain vahan, or mode of transport, which is unique to each of those goddesses or goddesses like forms. Then you move to, say, a Madhubani. Madhubani is the land of Sita Mata, and the creators, unlike, say, in Matani Pachedi, where it is a very family form, the male fronts most of the art form, but when you go to their homes, the women of the home are very much part of the creative process. When you go to Madhubani, actually, for the most part, the creators are women. And there is a lot of pride in bringing out the story around Sita, because that land of Madhuban is the holy land of Sita Mata, Raja Janak and Janakpur and all of those areas. Then you come down to the leather puppet, the Tolu Bomalata. What is fascinating there is it's largely the epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, but central to the character is a woman character called Bangaraka. Now, this woman is the person tasked with the job of passing the social messages, passing the messages in the intermission of the show. The woman has the liberty to be lewd, to be raunchy, to be saying things that otherwise are not palatable for uh, the presenter to say. So the woman has been given the liberty to, say pretty much anything that she wants. In fact, the parallel in a country like Indonesia, where they have the wayang kulit, is a character called Semal, but that's male. And so in India, somehow that role has been given to a female, right? Then you have your, traditional Gond and Bhil, which are, tribal in their form. And if you see, it's a very equal mix of, uh, both the genders who work on this. But if you look at contemporary women artists who are tribals themselves, who have moved on from their villages, moved to cities, moved to different occupations, their representation is very much contemporary. They are now showcasing in a particular tradition in artistically, but in terms of thematic choices, they are very contemporary. They are talking about their challenges in the modern day world, in a city, in contemporary urban living, etc. So it's amazing how all of these places, whatever be the form, the woman is involved both in the creative journey, in the actual production journey, and in the representational journey. So I think, unlike some of the other areas, like for example, in history, I have coins where the sense of erasure is very high. Only coins were issued mainly in the name of men. If occasionally there were women, but the moment the woman went out of the limelight, there was an active effort to remove the person's name. For example, Noorjahan is a classic case. So that does not happen in our indigenous and tribal art forms, where the woman's role is central across the spectrum, representationally, creatively, production wise. And she actually, in some of the art forms, is the main breadwinner for the family. So it reflects in the economic standing that the woman, and the social standing that comes out of that economic independence. So, yeah, that's my take on this.
Beautiful, sir. Thank you so much for your insightful observations. I would now request Haimanti Bagchi to share her insights. Ma'am, over to you now.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I feel so privileged to have got this opportunity to speak about something so relevant and important in the contemporary times. Also, it has been significant as it is my area of research as well. So, I would like to introduce the topic with an extremely fascinating, intangible cultural heritage of a tribe I came across today while reading an article. So, it's about how the intangible collective memory has its own way of manifesting itself through art practices around the world. So there's this Aboriginal Australian tribe who believe in star maps. So these are basically maps of the land, not maps of the sky. So star maps use the celestial bodies as the mnemonic device to teach the route, the physical cultural waypoints of a journey. So stars may indicate where to go, north or south, for instance. So They may indicate the location of a, say, a freshwater spring. So aboriginal Australian star maps are a part of song lines, a fascinating complex method of navigation. So in their mythology, a song which is basically based around creator beings. During their dreaming, the indigenous Australian embodiment of the creation of the earth. So each song line explains the route followed by creator being during the course of the myth. So the path of each creator being is marked in sung lyrics. So one navigates across the land by repeating the words of the song or reenacting the story through dance, which is in the course of telling the story, also to describe the location of various landmarks or the particular landscape. For example, certain rock formations or certain watering holes or maybe rivers or certain trees. So by singing a song cycle in an appropriate order, an explorer could navigate vast distances, often traveling through deserts of Australia's interior. So, in fact, early anthropologists who were stunned by the aborigines that they frequently walked across hundreds of kilometers of the desert, picking these tiny features along the way without any error, with the help of those song lines. So if we also see the sculptures and paintings from the historic times, there are some common patterns where we see memory as an important device. And this memory, when manifested through art, takes the cultural consciousness, knowledge system, or even belief and daily life patterns from one generation to another. So, another important thing which I need to share before getting deeper into the topic is the concept of tribe, because it has been something not understood in a proper way. So when we are referring to tribe, it does not necessarily living in caves or primitive people, but refers to aboriginal people living in a community. So especially in India, the concept of tribal had been dominated by colonial ethnographers and explorers, and subsequently, post colonial India, such studies became the field of um, dominant male caste, you can say. So from a similar perspective of dominance, these studies on the tribes of India viewed them as either backward, or from the point of view that civilization could be achieved only through bringing them into the mainstream. So this is essentially not the true representation of what we understand of tribal today. So keeping that in mind, if we move forward to some more representations. So the portrayal of women in art is a much debated issue, and it's revisited again and again after advancement of the feministic terminology or ideology. So the subsistence of a society is exclusively dependent on the feminine facet, in which the imagination of the endurance of human being is inconceivable. So the status and the connotation of womanhood can be defined appropriately through the visual art of particular time period. So in this context, the art, literature, architecture, religious manuscripts can be included, because they are the visual representations. They manifest the visual representation as a reflection of the society also. So these paintings can be used as a medium to revisit the role of women in the society, because art is always being connected with the socio-cultural tendencies, and it has strongly connected with the taste and demands of the individual, and it represents a particular timeline in the history. So, in the ancient age, paintings were made on the walls of the caves in the prehistoric period, we all know. So, which has been considered the first step of human development. In this perspective, if cave paintings are explored as an initial stage, the sexual identities for gender significance are not entirely visible, mainly because of the geometrical shaped figures on the walls, besides a few. Therefore, the gender is not fully visible through the linear composition of the figures. But the fertility cult and procreation was the most depicted in the rock paintings worldwide, if we see. In this concern, fertility has remained a par excellence and an exclusive merit of womanhood. So, the society and the surroundings of each antiquity sanctioned its uppermost place than any other, quality of woman. So, childbirth is also celebrated like a divine bliss, and it has been elaborated in the uh, caves and wall paintings, murals. So for instance, the people had beliefs in supernatural powers, or that it cures illnesses and brings bliss to life. So similarly, because they did not have that medical knowledge like we have now, so they considered childbirth as something which is metaphysical. It has metaphysical quality, and considered women as goddess. So, going through evidences, fertility and mother goddess cult has been focused from the prehistoric period and started to get developed in the Indus Valley civilization as well. So, in Indus Valley civilization, the woman has been depicted in form of clay figurines, bronze sculptures, and on the seals in symbolic manner we can find it. For example, we can take from the Ajanta Ellora caves. The murals of Ajanta Ellora are also very beautified and sensuous, but they all reproduce apart from being showing the womanhood, but they are promoting religious ideologies. So, for example, which at this point of time, which comes to my mind, is the dancing girl from Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro. It dated back to almost 2000 BCE, and the statue was not very big. It was very small, and it was of a nude young girl, very young girl, with stylized ornaments, standing in a confident, naturalistic pose. The dancing girl is regarded as a work, highly regarded as a work of art. And also an engraving can be was found near this Birana in India, a Harappan side in Fatehbad district in Haryana. It was found that there was this potsherd, red piece of potsherd, in which this dancing girl was engraved. So also we can find these goddess element, or women portrayed as goddess in Buddhist manuscripts. So Buddhist manuscript traditions started in 12th century Bihar and Bengal, and they were referred to as Eastern School by the critics. So the main theme of these illustrations is related to the religious beliefs associated with Lord Buddha and his incarnations. So art always existed as a medium to promote and protect religious antiquities, as paintings is almost said that it's the most convenient medium to express feelings. So these Buddhist religious manuscripts which I'm talking about were instrumental for the promotion of religion, and in these illustrations women have been portrayed in forms of common being to goddesses, including queens, princess, attendants, slaves, and so on. So there's also a manuscript in which which is fully based on a goddess tenet called Pragna Paramita. So The goddess Pragna, who is a goddess of wisdom in Buddhism, has been depicted in delightful colors with the scripture of Buddhism. And in these paintings, the goddess is almost, nude and semi-nude condition, but then it has powerful gestures. However, the main concern behind the goddess's depiction is the ritualistic aspect rather than a significant portrayal of common woman. So it is believed that the pragna, or wisdom by which nirvana is achieved, is visualized as a goddess named Pragna Paramita, and the style of the illustration depicts some influence from mural paintings of so we can understand that in such a society where we find sculptures of dancing girl, sculptures in Ajanta Ellora caves and other temple sculptures or paintings, female sexuality was not a threat at all and did not have to be managed. On the contrary, since the very survival of the community depended on it, female reproductive power was highly valued. So I'll stop here and hand on the stage to Sarah again. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much for such insightful observation. It was like very interesting explanation. Uh, I would now request Dr. Manjiri Thakoor to share her insights. Ma'am, over to you now.
Thank you so much. And after having heard about some wonderful thoughts, I'll just kind of put my insights into this. Basically, to start with, I'm also talking about some contemporary context where women powerfully incorporate their thoughts. I'm also going to touch base on some of the points where we have the menstruation as main issue or conceiving as an issue. For long many years in India, we have the whole process where uh, the garbhavati stri, is we have back to back lots of ceremonies associated. We have wonderful painting by Ganga Devi where we see the womb with the baby child inside. And then it also leads to another way of thinking where today we have a whole series of fulkari art, the embroidery that has been done by women, just with the mindset that they want their daughters to be very prosper and happy wherever they live after their marriages. No matter how much modernity that we see in the Bollywood so-called movies and songs today, the Fulkari has its own stand. And we all know what Fulkari means. It's turned out to be very contemporary today, but I'm sure the original flair is about womanhood, putting women into the passion of making it brilliantly colorful. It also has a significant symbolism that talks about not only the prosperous and fulfilled life of a daughter after her marriage, but it also talks about her reproductive, successful, life after that, after the marriage. Having said that, I have also many incidences where women are associated by women in the art and culture, not only in terms of making them the productive machine, so to say, but also as the kind of a support to the society where we have the whole series of Chamba Rumal, where again the embroideries are done by women. And they show a lot of things where even today the Chamba Rumal is about the union of Radha and Krishna. And no matter what you think about Radha and Krishna as their association or togetherness, they still do it and they still are very valuable. The people are looking at Chamba Rumal as the artifact, and I'm sure everybody will agree to this. I recently remember when I was delivering a couple of lectures at the Carleton University in Ottawa. There was a small visit at the Ottawa School of Art where I found the work of an Iranian girl, and she had worked on menstruation, but she worked with embroidery on the sanitary napkins, and it was amazing to see because an Iranian girl who is already looking at the carpet, the Iranian or the Persian carpet, that is the landmark of the place called Iran. Today we everybody look at that place as something else, but the craft still exists over a period of thousands of years, and this girl who's very young is looking at her menstruation cycle woven with embroidery skills on the sanitary napkins and tampons. I mean, it took me to another level of the thought process that a young girl from another country displaying her work in another country that has, I mean, that's a global art, I would feel. But again, the connectivity is through this, through the point of context where any woman could, start getting associated. Other thing which I would also like to add to this conversation is about Lajja Gauri. This is particularly a form where we have a woman sitting with her two legs separated as if she's conceiving a baby, and people are worshipping. Now, my point of thought is whether the people who actually created did they create it with some thought of pervertness behind it? The answer is definitely no. But today, when the young generation, like I have my students in like early 20s or in teens, they come to me and they talk about, we want to work on Lajja Gauri, and do you have literature? And obviously, I have literature, both in Marathi and English. English, there's a lot, but Marathi also, there's a scholar, R.C. Dhere, who has written a lot about Lajja Gauri, and it's mesmerizing. I mean, Chaushashta Yogini is one very profound theme of the whole Indian subcontinent, which stands, I mean, let alone just femininity, but this is something to do with very, very strong, and this adheres to the thought process of the young generation, which I believe is superb. So today I have a lot of works by my young artists, students who have worked on Lajja Gauri, and then I'm looking at this, menstruation cycle by an Iranian girl into Canada. I feel from prosperity to giving birth to protecting the society in one the chain is what the women should be looked upon. And at the same time, whatever work that I have done, like oral traditions and traveling arts, yes, oral traditions and traveling art was important part of India. When the language is what not known in Indian subcontinent, we have like every 50 miles we have a language changing, the phonetic changing, the accents changing. We speak Marathi in Mumbai and people speak in Pune and Nagpur. That's a huge amount of difference. But art doesn't have its own language. And obviously, the traveling theaters carried the props where the main had to come to the level of becoming a woman to portray what they wanted to show. Be it Draupadi or Sita or Kali or Durga, whoever, they had to bring into those props. I think those props have somewhere left us with the rich tradition legacy that builds up, a strong, consolidated structure to the society that binds the whole art fraternity together. And I will not only say art, I will also say literature. As Haimanti was also saying about Buddhism, I think most of the time when you're looking at Buddhism on the Silk Road, you're talking about many women goddesses entering into the Buddhist pantheon, and that's typically uh, beyond certain imaginations. In Indian pantheon also we have these goddesses coming for every consort, to the gods, and they have their own vehicles and they have their own powers, and most of the times they're superseding the gods they're associated with. I think it's there in all the religions. And I feel the connectivity to all the religious philosophy globally, there will always be, the feminist part of it. I'm not going to be, I don't want to sound like a very feminist, but the type of works in the contemporary context where I see Nilima Sheikh working whole process, and I feel that is very, very important. So when you're looking at the art forms, be it Chambarumal or be it the Fulkari, uh, it is there, yes. And Madhubani, obviously, as I said, Ganga Devi showing, that's kind of a courage for a woman to show
I think Dr. Manjiri is
tribal
facing some
women have,
connectivity issue. Yes, ma'am.
yeah, can you
Can
hear
you
me?
please
Yeah.
repeat a little bit? Yeah, you just logged out because of the connectivity issue.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm so sorry for this. Yeah, so basically, I am trying to talk about no matter which continent we are in, no matter which timeline we are in, so whether vertical or horizontal, my thought process runs through the whole idea of women being very integrally involved into the development of this culture, be it oral, be it visual, that kind of connectivity. And I'm very thankful that, women, whether in the parts of the tribes or parts of the metropolises in India or abroad, still think alike. And that's coming in out of their traditional knowledge of basic handicrafts, that they are evolving to the whole manifestation, which is making the world perplexed today. I think that's a question mark. For a 21-year-old boy to come and talk about Lajja Gauri, or an Iranian girl talking about menstruation, and they're not even looking at what sort of platform they're likely to get. They're just being bold and beautiful to talk about, this is our craft. I'm going to work in metal, embossing or repose. This is my craft. I'm going to be working in making embroidery or tapestry, and they're okay because the traditional knowledge is imbibed, it's passed through generations, and they're evolving it with the very new touch, which is accepted, appreciated, and taken into account by many in the world. And there's no doubt that this is going to continue. Whether or not women are going to just put it forward, it's going to be everybody together. And that's how I think the world is connected together. So it's not about women or men, because that's what I feel very strongly. It's about appreciation, it's about acceptance. And if you're looking at acceptance for the art and culture with visuals and literatures, I think that's where we have to, be on that platform. So my request to the contestants and participants who would want to join this cause should probably look very widely into the world and start looking around where women are doing something for their daughters or daughter-in-laws or girls, um, and men accepting it very courageously. And if they're not, just just walk one or two steps ahead to get that appreciation in the house or in the circumference. So the art doesn't get vanned out, the stories don't get erased out, and the confidence that this should be the art will never ever get deleted. So for a girl, for an Iranian girl looking at sanitary napkin or a tampon as an art object, as a medium of art, shouldn't be dejected or rejected by society. So we have to put our thoughts together and we have to join our hands together to do these things. Thank you so much.
So true, ma'am. Thank you so much for your insightful observation. Now, I would like to, talk, or I would like to request Dr. Jaseera CM to share her insights. Ma'am, over to you now.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope I am audible now.
Yes, ma'am, you are absolutely audible.
Thank you, and very sorry for the initial interruptions. And
No
I have
problem.
mainly worked on the potter community of Kerala, especially the central Kerala. So this talk is mainly based on the research that conducted on potter communities of Kerala. So actually, pottery that usually considered as the vocation of women. But the case of Kerala is slightly different because if we are focusing on the central Kerala, so in central Kerala there are pottery manufacturing are adopted by the one is wheel technique, the other is mold and hand shaping method. So most of the workshops where mold and hand shaping method is employed. These workshops actually managed by women. But the workshops where wheel technique is employed, where actually the pot forming is done by the male members of the family, and the second stage of production, like the paddling, is done by women. So the learning modality of this tree and this skill transmission to the next generation through apprenticeship from childhood. So the children get training by helping the elders in different stages of pottery making. So there is no specific age to learn this craft, and the learning practice and experience. So the traditional potters in central Kerala belonging to the community is called Kushava community. So in coming to the representation of the potter community in the art and the sculptures of India, usually potters or their activities are not a common theme in art or the sculptures of India. However, you can see different types of pottery, of different forms of pottery that has been paintings and sculptures. So that actually gave a history of the evolution of pot forms. But other than that, there is no depiction of women potters, or the potters activity is not represented much, not much represented in the art forms. So the prime reason for this non-representation may be the visibility of this community. So we usually buy products made by the potters, be aware of the community, the tradition. So moreover, the common trend in art uh, to depict the dominant group of the society, that usually in art that they'll try to depict the dominant group, the in the hierarchy, the high. So that may be the one of the reason that these community is not getting into the representation in art form. So this mainly in the marginalized communities actually rarely comes into the picture of art sculptures if we speak archaeologically. So so I stop here. So then, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your insightful observation. Uh, Now we will move on to the question and answer session. The first question is for Paul Abraham. Sir, please share your insights on how the selected artwork in your collection represent tribal women as artisans, or in general, women as subjects or consumers. Also, elaborate if it integrates the experiences of contemporary women. Sir, you are muted.
I'm sorry. I know. I think it's very difficult and sometimes not even correct to create that distinction between, you know, a lot of people say indigenous and contemporary and see them in two different buckets. I think wherever people are working in today's context, they are contemporary. Some of these are very patently drawing upon stories which are community stories, right? So to that extent, they rely on a more community based memory, like Haimanti was talking about, so they access a memory bank of stories which are particular to their communities. But having said that, if you look at it today, and I have a lot of art, even from contemporary art from Kerala, and if you look at the women artists who are there, they are extremely active across themes. It's there are women who talk of single parenthood. There's C.G. Krishnan, who actually shows a painting where she shows her father breastfeeding her, and that is very, very powerful, because I think the father brought her up, and she sees that, role all encompassed in the father, both the mother's role and the father's role. And so many other artists who have talked about contemporary issues of environment, contemporary issues of social problems, etc. If you go to Madhubani, for example, there was always this conundrum of the caste system. Okay, the Brahmins and the castes had initial privileged access. The Dalit communities were prevented from particular forms of representation. So they had to create their own narrative. So some of them, for example, made a hero of a character called Raja Salesh. Now, Raja Salesh was created as a character because they were not allowed to showcase gods and goddesses in the conventional sense on their paintings. But today, there are people like Dulari Devi, who is, a Padma Shri, a very eminent persona in the Madhubani space. She does exactly what she wants. She has empowered herself, and she does, canvases which are theme agnostic in some senses, because she chooses how she's going to represent. If you look at someone like Lado Bhai, who is from the Bhil background, Lado Bhai's paintings very, very elemental, rustic, simple, but very powerful in the stories they are telling. And the same thing in the Gond fraternity. If you actually see, Jangar Singh's daughter Japani. Japani is again talking, she and her brother, interestingly, they are both, very, very contemporary in their outlook and in their representation. And their father, in so many ways, is the doyen of the art form, as known to us, in the public. Their mother, Nankusia, Jangar Singh's wife, she still paints in the old conventional technique. So obviously, there has been a very clear departure, which is premeditated. And these youngsters have decided that, making Haril Pachi and, gods and goddesses and saja trees are not their priority. It's not as if they reject it, but they have many contemporary modern issues to talk about, and so they do that in their visual representation. So I feel that at the end of the day, eh, it is a natural evolutionary process where women have taken charge of their own palette, of their own storytelling, and in many cases have actually led from the front in some of these art forms. When I'm talking, for example, in Madhubani, there is a very famous couple who was there, uh, Moti Karan. Is the husband died, the wife is there, and the wife actually works now in very close partnership with her daughter-in-law. She has not downloaded to the son or the grandson. She has actually worked with her daughter-in-law, and the two of them work in conjunction, creating very powerful, visual narratives. And for them, it's very clear that this is the preserve of the woman, because apart from creative expression, it guarantees economic independence. And when you go to Madhubani, you see that. You see the women sit rightfully in the front and center of all conversations, discussions, debates. So I think that's really what it is. I don't think there are maybe attempts to kind of in some contexts, minimize or diminish their role and stature. But I, what I have seen across the country is for all of these people to be taking charge of their own destiny.
Beautiful, sir. It is a great take on the answer. I I would now ask Haimanti Bagchi, as an independent researcher, please share your views on any specific art form that represents the societal and cultural condition of tribal women in history.
Thank you so much for the question. And through this question, I think, as Paul sir was saying about Madhubani, so it intrigued
Yeah.
me to speak about Madhubani, apart from all the art forms, because for about Madhubani there is something very special. So where we can see the clear power hierarchies and intersections of caste, as well as the gender also. So in high caste Hindus, like caste or Brahmin families, a type of Mithila art called Bhitti Shobha murals and Aripana, or the floor art, are used in different forms of austerities. So the patriarchal norms denied the women to go out of their house, and all the activities of the household pursued by the wife, and the special practices. And this long time back, in the uh, maybe a century before. So during these traditional ritualistic ceremonies, which these women used to you know um, uh, draw all of these art forms. So these were special ritualistic practices in which Mithila art form actually grew. So, however, these images only represents action of women, and as a like a wife, like mother, uh, whoever takes part in the household activities. So contemporary artists, on the other hand, like sir was saying, express what women see and feel. For example, like I'll take the example of another artist called Ganga Devi, who is also a celebrated artist, and has presented her American series in 1985, long time back, depicted her individual perception of the outside world. So this is in stark contrast to the tradition, which represents the collective consciousness or universal experience of Maithil women. So she laid the stepping stone that several women have climbed and built upon. Overtly feminist themes have finally evolved in the art and had always been preserve of the women. So traditionally, the life of the women of Mithila started off as being a devotee around the age of 7, when she would start to pray to the goddess Gauri for a suitable husband, possessing qualities of Lord Shiva. So these daily prayers and occasional special offerings continue during these. And finally, when she got married, the newlywed couple offers prayer together and thank the god for their benevolence. So her principal deity changes to her husband's Kul Devi from then on. So the house where they consummate their wedding is called Khobarghar or Puren. So in Khobarghar or Puren, uh, one can find the most popular rendition of the traditional painting. So the word Puren, used by Brahmins, and literally it means lotus leaf, and the drawing is a representation of lotuses or water lilies arranged in circular geometric fashion, and the lotus is symbolic of woman's fertility and emblem of abundance. So that's adopted by many local pond from adopted from many ponds, which are full by blooming flowers in the monsoon time. So the pond becomes the source, and the fish is the representative of fertility. Tortoise represents love. Snake represents divinity, which appear in and around the purane. So the moon, the sun, and the idols are often drawn nearby, which describes or identifies as the witness to the act of marriage. So the different caste versions are different in tradition and symbols of the same traditional painting of Madhubani. So, for example, caste Khobar paintings has faces in the ring of the lotus, and lotus stem is kept piercing the central lotus motif. And the face drawn might be the goddess, as several folk tales suggest that the pond is the resting place of goddess Gauri. So the Devi is depicted metaphorically in lotus, and the lotus in turn depicts the fertility of women. So that creates a close association between human and divine. So the natural becomes an auspicious and feminine symbol. In Bhitti Chitra, on the other hand, there is a composition of Nena Yogini, which is the drawing of a veiled woman, when one eye, with only one eye visible, with a pot or a basket on the head. It's a part of Chauset Yogini in Hinduism, as identified by the scholars. So it's believed that this representation is symbolic to the women present in the wedding ceremony, that wards off the evil eye, so protects and blesses the couple. So the painting is drawn on the four corners of the Khobar Ghar, or the newlywed couple's room. Also, there are artists from Dalit communities. They are unfortunately not allowed to use certain art themes like gods and goddesses, and hence are bound to produce art which incorporates nature, Dalit narratives, Dalit art, like Sir was saying about Raja Salhesh. So, in Dalit representation, Raja Salhesh's story is, very commonly found. So, Dalit art as a whole represents protest against the age-old caste system and their marginalization. Also, women in Mithila from Dushad and Chamar communities belonging to Dalit population, and unique themes. Operation, then discrimination, marginalization, and represent their subalternity and protest through their art form. So there was this German anthropologist called Erika Moser, who can be credited to encourage and direct these women, Dalit women, to embrace the art form in around 1970s, and began writing a new chapter of social acceptance and financial independence. So this basically led the Dalits being included in the Mithila paintings as well, because before that they were not allowed to do the Madhubani paintings or Mithila paintings. So Moser, who is also a filmmaker and social activist, inspired these, destitute Dushad neighborhood to paint their neighborhood. The outcome was the Shads recording their oral history in very bold compositions and figures based on conventional tattoo patterns, which is locally known as Godna. So such also, like, on the stories, on the folklores of Raja Salhesh, and representation of their main deity Rahu. So the already thriving art community in the area gained another distinct new style as a result. So yeah, I would like to stop here. And Sarah, thank you.
It was really fascinating to hear you out. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would request Dr. Manjiri to speak on this, ma'am. Just a minute. Yeah. So please share a few of your indigenous collectibles on female tribal paintings or artworks. What unique symbols, motives, and designs of the tribal art represented the social and cultural aspect of tribal womanhood?
Uh, I'm going to talk a little bit of Maharashtra, not because I am a Maharashtrian, but the type of cultures that I have come across during my research and during my travels to Ajanta and Ellora multiple times, because I was working on the project for them for the last 10 years odd. Um, and also part of Konkan on the coastal line to, central Deccan area. There's this very interesting part about womenhood I mean, this is there all over the country, but typically what I have found out is the oral tradition, it's magnificent. So you go back about to till about 300 years or 400 years, and we have this beautiful culture of women getting up in the morning, early morning, and doing the churning of what we call zata. So they are grinding. There are these grinding stones one on top of the other, and they're grinding and they're singing songs. This was magnificently not recorded. It was just passed on orally from one generation to the other generation. The women had a great courage to incorporate the social, uh, you know, uh, changes and activities into the songs that they sung very early in the morning, which were heard by women. There have been lots of stories which were incorporated in those oral traditions, which later on became part of the Deccan art. I mean, the Deccan miniature painting that we talk about, which is not typically what came from the northern side. It was the activities that these women incorporated. I mean, they had all sorts of complaints about in-laws, everybody. They also had this messages transferred from one place to the other place about, especially during the Maratha dynasty, I feel these kind of roles that they played were very, very, very important, because this was a time of very much rigidity over them to not cross the borders of their houses or villages, and the only game that they would play were these songs. Then came the gathering of lots of materials where they started doing their crafts. One was Godhadi. So they collected the fabrics of all sorts and they started doing the patchwork, and the Godhadi also became part of the oral tradition converted into a narrative art. They started painting walls, first inside the house and outside the house. Many houses, even today, they have the custom of doing rangolis outside their houses over the Tulsi Vrindavan and around. There is some kind of narrative that they kind of put, either to show that the house has a prosperity, or the house has rigidity, or the house has some taboos, and so on and so forth. Interesting enough, if one has to do a research, this would be amazing part of the story. Simple geometrical, forms which created our Sanskriti. And I would here uh, definitely recommend the book to read for everyone, which is written by Dr. Harsha Dahejia, where he writes Akruti to Sanskriti, where these simple geometrical forms have become part of our culture. And believe it or not, this was done by women. So they had no limitations of mediums and materials. They used turmeric, they used rice powder, they used old rags. They had their, husky voices to shout and loudly talk about the stories in singing, whether it rhymed or not, it still continued. And then later on, it became part of Launi, where women came out of their threshold, decorated themselves in some, jewelry and saris, and actually started dancing. The dialogue was assumed that it was between Radha and Krishna. There was nut cut, but it was definitely to pass on some message to the society at that particular time. Now, this is wow. This is totally a wow factor. Today we have social media people and they pick up and they talk, but that time, women thinking something like that, it's not only about craft, it's also about literature. And I'm saying it again and again because these women, most of the times, never saw what school was. They never read books. We have Bahina Bai, amazing poetry written, sung by her. She never wrote because she never knew what writing was. And there were so many of them. I mean, even Justice Ranade's wife, she began with Seva Sadan activity because she was meant to read and write by Justice Ranade. But till then, women didn't know what writing was. I mean, that was particularly a time when women were just suddenly thrown out of the society, maybe out of the concern that they need protection because there are a lot of invaders, and this happened all over. I mean, I'm just taking Maharashtra as a case study, but this happened all over. What I feel very happy is about, if today somebody wants to do a research, why not we think about what orally they sang, what they picked up randomly, and they created art. So whether it is a simple Tulsi Vrindavan to be decorated with just dots and lines, or it is the Garbhadhana, sanskar that they are doing for the daughter-in-law or the daughter in the third month or the seventh month. There's something which is passed on very, very consolidatedly, very, very profoundly, that has been coming in through over the generations. And they were bold and beautiful in their presentations. They never cared about how they looked, how they were heard. They never cared about it. They never even, as I said, they never even thought about whether it was hymning or not. They just opened up. The message was to convey ki bhai suno, what is going on. The daughter is tortured, the daughter-in-law man who is probably the feudal lord or whoever. So they were doing this, and that was very strongly going on. And I think that fascinates me, even if you have to really go deep inside looking at the folklore, then women are strongly there to compile the stories, put them into hymns, compile the materials, put them into craft, and they passed on to the generations. Over the period of time, we may have refined a little bit to the craftsmanship, but over and above, the beauty is in the rustic, because when you're doing a godhadi, you're doing a patchwork, the fabrics have their own sense and sensitivity, and that's what the legacy is about. So you have your tragedy and your happiness all compiled into the godhari that is spread for a newborn child there. And every time you're looking at the fabric, you're passing on the story. This was the sari for this occasion, this was a fabric for this occasion, and this is transferred from one generation to the other generation. I think this is one of the ways where even today I see, be it tying and dyeing, women are taking the initiative to create the pigments. Even if it is the fur art of Rajasthan, Shahpur, I've talked to the Joshi family. I've seen the women and the girls in the family actually, making the fabric for them, and they are doing the outlines, and the girls and the women are filling the colors inside. They know what the color pattern is, they know what the color scheme is, they know where women will get attracted, they know what women look at orange circle or a red circle as. This is particularly the whole journey of Akruti to Sanskriti, from Nirakar to Akar, and then again going back to Nirakar. And this whole process is of life to death, to life to death, and it's not going to end. It's about that contribution of women, who pulls in all the synergies, puts it in order. And she is a curator herself. She knows how to put it in order. She knows how to compose it in the right manner at right time. So the songs don't get wrongly sung at wrong time. They know which is the song, which is the note which has to come on what occasion. So oral traditions and art is something which is a huge topic which somebody can actually ponder upon, gather the database, and start working on small communities. They'll have stories we have no idea about. They have art we have never comprehended at all. And if we look at it, I think, let alone those prominent art and crafts which are thriving all over the globe, India might come up with thousands of such arts hidden under the sands, which might just come ahead. And we are looking at this new generation, because now we are getting old to travel and talk to the people. But I'm sure the younger generation will have a little more time to enter into the zones of their discomforts and talk to men and women and children about their stories and what sort of props they have gathered for their own art and culture. So, yes, this is how I feel oral traditions and traditional art and craft have to be combined together. Thank you so much.
It was indeed very heartwarming and very interesting answer. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to ask Jaseera CM. Ma'am, please share your insights from your journal article titled An Ethnographic Study of Pottery Workshops in Central Calcutta, South India. How has globalization influenced the pottery techniques and designs in Central Kerala, and what impact does this have on the authenticity of the craft? Ma'am, please, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Then definitely that definitely affected the household pottery production. Like the industrial goods like steel and the plastic containers actually replaced the earthen pottery from household. So the durability of these goods, like the durability of these steel vessels or the plastic vessels, so the compared to the earthen vessels, so the durability is one of the factor behind the selection uh, in the household. So many of the house pottery workshops actually stop their production, that earthen pottery production. It is difficult to compete with this industrial wares, so that they stop this production. There are other factors like difficulty in getting the raw material. There are other factors, but the major or the prime factor is the difficulty to compete with the industrial wares. Some of the portals started making new or new forms of pottery to adapt with the changing needs, because the cooking vessel is no longer, it's not that much needed in the current scenario. So that actually they are making new forms like for example clever vases or clever pots. These are new addition into their assemblage. uh, so uh, so this is the major change that happened in terms of its forms, pottery forms. And in the technical side, actually, there are some pottery workshops that actually adopted mechanized wheels. So that technique itself creates some kind of changes into the into the final product of um, like the pottery forms, that the wheel made or mechanized wheel production is slightly different from the hand or manual wheel. So then the regarding the authenticity. So I think word authenticity is an elusive word. So I would say there is nothing called authentic, because uh, in the context of pottery forms, the pottery forms that we are seeing today, these pottery have undergone a evolution according to the social factors of each period. So pottery craft is not static; it's actually flowing along with the temporality. So we have to understand that this transculturation is a common process that is happening in every social group. So in this context, I would like to refer the work of Regina Bendit, especially that her work titled "In the formation of folklore study in 1997. So actually, in this emphasize that we should eliminate the search for authenticity from all cultural studies or any cultural program that for forever. So yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was actually indeed a very great answer. So, this brings us to the end of today's session. I thank all the panelists once again for sharing their invaluable perspective on the topic. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions on tribal art and tribal representation in art, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. We will come back to you soon with our next panel discussion on the topic. Till then, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Thank you.
night. Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
Thank you.